TalkRadio.com.
The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of Talk Radio AM 640.
10, 9, 8, 7,
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
I'm the guy they call the Spaceman. This is AVFS. I'd like to welcome you in if you're driving around town right now, listening to AM 640, picking up the show there. I welcome you in. Or if you're listening on the AM 640 app at work or somewhere, I welcome you in too. Or if you're listening to me right now on Shaw Direct, on channel 865, welcome you in also. If you're listening on your 3 or 4G personal communication device, you know, the one everyone's staring at 95% of their day, I welcome you in too. Or what some call the best seat in the house. Sitting in front of your Mac, your PC, logged on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming there. I welcome you in wherever you are in the world. I welcome you in. If you're a regular listener, I bet you've heard this before. The Illuminati are going to follow the King James Version of the Bible to the letter to fake the coming of the new Christ. In this new millennium, and I believe very soon, what the elites called the Golden Age of Saturn is going to be introduced. And this is what all the blood sacrificing has been about throughout the centuries. Forget about last year and this year in this new millennium. For centuries. You see, there is a counterfeit duplicate of what's in the King James Version of the Bible that the Illuminati have planned for this world to change systems, collapse an empire, and force the final global empire on us all. The tribulation, the great tribulation, it said in the King James Bible that God will send Jesus Christ from the heavenly sea of glass before his throne to establish his millennial kingdom on earth. Then he will reign as king over all of the earth. Well, the duplication of the Illuminati and that plan that's in and ingrained in every Western Christian on the earth, ingrained in them of this truth in the King James Version of the Bible. The satanic duplication is that the pagans in the pre-flood era viewed the Creator God as coming forth from the cosmic sea to establish the earth. In the Old Testament period, Pan, also known as Saturn, was viewed by Greeks, Romans, Egyptians as the beast out of the sea. The Great Tribulation, Satan will rise out of the cosmic sea to incarnate the Antichrist as the Saturn king. Yes, he will possess the bloodline member of the Cain bloodline, the highest ranking member, and become the Antichrist and reign as the Saturn king in this new empire. The prophetic dispensations of what's written in the King James Version of the Bible is this. A sea of glass, you see, surrounds the heavenly throne of God according to the Bible, and before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal, and eyes before it, and eyes behind it. Revelation 4:6. And I saw it as it were a sea of glass, mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. Revelation 15:2, King James Version of the Bible. God will then send, the plan of the Bible, send Jesus Christ from the heavenly sea of glass before the throne to establish his millennial kingdom on earth. And there's scripture that states exactly that. And Dan, chapter 7, verse 9, chapter 13 through 14, describes this sea of glass and the Christ coming out of the heavenly sea of glass to reign on his throne. He will reign as king over all the earth, and the Lord shall be king over the earth, the Bible says. And that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. Zechariah 14:9. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit on the throne of his glory. That's in Matthew 25, verse 31. The satanic Illuminati plan that runs parallel with that book and that plan, in ancient pagan mythology, the planetary god Saturn emerges from the cosmic sea as the serpent who rescues the world following the chaos of Genesis 1, which is the Great Flood. According to legend, Saturn founded the utopian kingdom of Atlantis and became the divine ancestor of all earthly patriarchs and kings. Another golden age of Saturn is anticipated, at which time the demonic gods of Atlantis will once again reign on earth to initiate mankind into their ancient wisdom, paganism and Satanism, and transform the human race into gods. I can tell you right now that the touch screen on your computers is exactly the hand of God, the duplicate satanic hand. Listen to me carefully now. Michelangelo paints the portrait that's in the Vatican at St. Peter's Basilica, with God reaching down with his finger, and a man reaching up with his finger, and they both touch to communicate. And that's exactly what you do today with the new touch screens. You put your finger down and touch, and magic happens on the screen, transforming the race into gods, because your smartphone makes you a partial god. You have the technology that turns you into a master communicator. At this time, Saturn, Kronos, Pan, whatever you want to call him, Lucifer, will rise from the bottomless pit to incarnate the false Christ Messiah of the world religion and the occult's false millennium. Pan is also Pales, spelled P-A-L-E-S. The beast out of the sea, or earthly representative of the solar god, is what Pallas means. Satan, Lucifer, also known as Saturn, Hercules, Pan, the name of Palestine, is even derived from this Pallas, the word for Pan, derived from the Greco-Roman god named Pallas, Pan. But Israel is named after the god Elohim. 2 Chronicles 7:14 and Isaiah 43:71. Those who renamed Israel as Palestine did so in order to glorify the pagan phallic god Pallas, Pan, rather than the true God of Israel. That's also recorded in the Bible. When I return, more on this duplication of this coming, this second coming of Jesus Christ will in fact be a fake Christ coming. The Masonic Christ will be put onto the throne as the replacement. It's the Spaceman, Talk Radio, AM 640. Back with more in just a moment. And I'm just getting started. What a guy to call space. It's a view from space. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Like to communicate with me? It's email only, spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Opening break, I described to you a parallel plan. What's in the recorded King James Version of the Bible that has been grilled into people's minds and psyche and souls for more than 2,000 years now. There's also a parallel plan that is going to merge with it. And of course, if you believe that Jesus Christ is going to come back again, the fake has to come before the real thing. Because if the real thing comes, no one will accept the fake. So the fake must be first if there's a second coming. Pan, also Pales, the beast out of the sea that will rise, to be the earthly representative of the solar god, the sun god, Satan, Lucifer. The name Palestine is taken from Pallas, the Greco-Roman god. Why? Because Palestine is the key to the start of the tribulation. A 7-year peace plan after the Palestinians get their homeland, borders constructed, all Palestinians moving into the area with their own country. It will be a 7-year peace plan that John Kerry is working on right now. 7-year plan. At the end of the 3.5 years, halfway through, it blows up in their face, and all hell breaks loose on the earth. It's all connected and timed with the mechanism of the new state for Palestine. Pan is Pallas, the Greco-Roman god. In the pre-flood era, Pallas, Pan, the ancient hermaphrodite god of nature, was believed to be the divine substance from which the universe evolved. Pan was an hermaphrodite. I direct your attention now to what has been really the talk of social media over the weekend until the earthquake in Nepal. It was Bruce Jenner. And the quote from the interview that was aired on ABC television this weekend was, Bruce Jenner says that now he, male, is a woman. Both sexes, hermaphrodite. He's playing the role of the hermaphrodite this weekend. Pan, Pallas, the ancient hermaphrodite god of nature, believed to be the divine substance from which the universe evolved. The message in the Illuminati-controlled mass media of Bruce Jenner and what they talked about in that 2-hour episode is a representation, a direct attempt to put Pallas, Pan, in front of you and at the epicenter. The fundamental doctrine of magic is phallicism, you see. New life is created by the act of generation. The life force is generated by the sexual force, the union of male and female elements, as represented by the two opposing equilateral triangles. The hexagram, which is the flag of Israel. The phallic God is therefore hermaphroditic, bisexual. The sexual organs are considered sacred to the Illuminati, while the rites and rituals are designed to liberate the passions and the natural instincts from the control of reason. The initiate must denounce as fraud the existence of a moral order, first of all, together with that of its creator. This is the exact reverse of what the King James version of the Bible states. The creation of the universe, according to the phallic adepts, is the work of the hermaphroditic God. The universe was not created, but procreated or engendered by him in successive stages. The God himself is supposed to have been the original and unique emanation of the divine substance of which all things are made. The origin of all. And what are they trying to pass off the internet as today? The internet of all things is how it's being phrased now. That's what gives the person the godlike attributes. The technology, the black magic spell is going to convince people they are gods. So, the initiate has to, first of all, denounce as fraud the existence of a moral order. It doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. Being right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Only thinking makes that so. Together with that of its creator, this is the exact reverse of what the King James Version of the Bible stands for. In this role, the god Pan, the first principle of nature, man is placed on a pair with his creator, on par rather. Both are divine and immortal, man and God. Man therefore creates when he procreates. Make sense to you? Now, the Roman god Saturn, called Kronos by the Greeks, was the king of Atlantis. Uranus was deposed from the throne of Atlantis and succeeded by his son Kronos. Some things never change, do they? We've seen Kronos identified with the Atlantic Ocean, called by the Romans the Cronian Sea originally. He was known to the Romans, under the name of Saturn, and ruled over a great Saturnian continent in the Western Ocean, Atlantis. Pan, Saturn, was and still is the pantheistic, monotheistic god of all pagans. Pan was at one time absolute nature, the one and great all. In astrology, Pan is one aspect of Saturn and is also equated with Satan and with life in its base aspects. The modern occultist compares the Greek Pan with the Latin word omni, the Sanskrit om, the Egyptian word Amun, the Hebrew Amen, all designations of the hidden god of the forest, the abyss, the deep, the underground, any region withdrawn and without the range waking consciousness. Now, in fact, the 15th tarot card in the occult playing card deck to tell fortunes, divine the future, represents Pan, the 15th tarot card, the very old nature god of merriment, sensuality, fertility, life force. Pan has the appearance of a half-man, half-goat. I've gone into it many times here on the show on AVFS, Talk Radio AM 640. The goat is related to Capricorn, and therefore Saturn. Pan, the nature god, where we get the word pantheism. The god of shepherds, huntsmen, peasants, dwellers on the land. Homer makes him the son of Hermes and Dryope. His name means simply all. He was the inventor of the Pandean pipes, and no nymph who ever heard their sound could possibly resist the fascination of the great Pan, never mind his grotesque looks. Pan is related to the Mendician goat, only so far as the goat represents as a talisman of great occult potency, nature's creative force. The whole of the Hermetic philosophy is based on nature's hidden secrets. And as Baphomet, so undeniably a Kabbalist talisman, so the name of Pan, of great magic efficiency, in what Eliphas Levi would call the conjuration of the elementals. There's a well-known pious legend, which has been circulating in the Christian world ever since the day of Tiberius, to the effect that the great god Pan is dead. But people are greatly mistaken in this. Neither nature nor any of her forces can ever die. A few of these may be left unused, been forgotten, lie dormant for long centuries, but no sooner are the proper conditions furnished than they awake to act again with tenfold power. That is the belief of the Illuminati and the occultist. That's what's coming. And I believe it starts with the first glimmer that we see of a Palestinian state being formed. Once that begins, a 7-year peace plan will be signed. It will be for 7 years, mark my words, and at the end of 3.5 of those years, halfway through, all hell will break loose. I'll cover that and a whole lot more on what it will be like during the tribulation time here when the Saturn King is on his throne. Space back with more. The other side of the break on Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS.
640.
I'm the guy to call Space. You can email me, spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. RG writes, will the Antichrist be the body of a man inhabited by Lucifer? Correct. My interpretation is that the highest bloodline member of the Cain clan, tracing the lineage all the way back to the Garden of Eden, and that bloodline member will be disguised and cleverly pass himself off as have all of the proof that he is in fact from the house of David and not Cain, which is one of the prerequisites of the coming Christ. Must be from the house of David. Now, in the tribulation, the first 3.5 years, where there is no problem, but a peace plan has been put in place, Satan is called the Red Dragon. Now, I direct your attention to the flag of Wales. Wales is the Red Dragon. The Prince of Wales is Prince Charles. Not always there is a Prince of Wales being chosen. Sometimes they are skipped, and sometimes a very high-ranking member of the royal family is given that designation, the Prince of Wales. So the Red Dragon could possibly be Prince Charles, or the next in that bloodline who will become the new Prince of Wales. That still remains to be seen. No one really knows yet. Satan is called, as I said, the red dragon. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And you know the rest, Revelation 12:3. The Roman Catholic Church, Mystery Babylon, whose cardinals and priests wear what? Red vestments, will be misrepresented as the beast. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, red, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations, filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Revelation 17, verses 4 through 5. The Great Tribulation, the golden age of Saturn, the Antichrist will be clothed with red garments also. Because that's what the King James Version of the Bible states. I just read it to you. So he carries away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottom pit, and go into perdition. Revelation 17:3. The beast, we're talking about this entity, this empire, was, as the King James Version of the Bible states, there was an ancient Roman Empire. All right. Is not, the next words, was and is not. Now there is no Roman Empire any longer, is there? But shall ascend. It will come back again. I believe the European Union is the Holy Roman Empire. If you look at the old, ancient Holy Roman Empire map, it is exactly what the EU is mapped out as, give or take some of the areas, and the EU is not finished yet with completing its 10 nations that will take part in this. Right now, there are many more than 10. That will also change. I believe that's going to be an economic crisis that will change that. You can see it already with Greece and their debt already teetering, along with Spain and Portugal, Italy, and it goes on and on. The Hopi prophecies, the ancient Aboriginals from America, the Hopi tribe, the chiefs were told that the light would bring a reawakening and would come from the east, and that it would come from the true white brother, and he would wear a red cloak or a red hat and would bring with him the sacred stone tablet. That's in the Hopi prophecy. Spread from ancient times, the same plan to, well, put into the mind of the Aboriginals and today's people the exact same story of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Or is it? Now, since his resurrection, Jesus Christ resides in heavenly ivory palaces, we're told in the King James Version of the Bible, where he reigns over the kingdom of heaven. The Antichrist will reside in a white palace also, here on earth, at precisely Mount Hermon, when he reigns over the false kingdom of heaven during the golden age that's planned and coming soon. I've told you about the White House before, the White Palace. You see, that was ISIS's headquarters in what's now called Nineveh in Iraq. an ancient white palace. Isis would live there, the goddess of all occult religions. So Jesus Christ resides in a heavenly ivory palace. What color is ivory? White. And the Antichrist will duplicate this same story. Will live in a white palace on Mount Hermon when he reigns over his false kingdom of heaven during the Golden Age. The temple will be at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, where it always has been. The third temple will finally, someday soon, be rebuilt. That will be the temple, but the Antichrist himself, the king of this new coming empire, will live in the white palace atop Mount Hermon. It's written over and over again in religion and history. The King James Version of the Bible states that God's plan, the church age, Jesus Christ refers to the New Jerusalem as my Father's house. Now, Jerusalem is going to be the political headquarters for the Antichrist, the new system, the new empire. I believe the spiritual place to pilgrimage to will be moved from Jerusalem to Glastonbury, England. It will have healing properties. King Arthur will be wrapped into this incredible parallel that runs with the second coming of Christ. Now, the program that the Illuminati have scheduled to go in parallel with this plan in the King James Version of the Bible is in the pre-flood era. Horus means White House, by the way. Hermon means sacred, Mount Hermon, the sacred mountain. Horus, the White House. Old Testament period, the Egyptian Pharaoh means White House. The Pharaoh also lived in a white palace. Church age, Herod built a white palace dedicated to Caesar at Caesarea Philippi. Mount Hermon. The President of the United States, of course, as we all know and are aware, lives in a White House. The Antichrist will have a palace in a glorious, holy, sacred mountain, which probably refers to Mount Hermon, I believe. Now, the King James Version of the Bible states in the church age, Jesus Christ refers to the New Jerusalem as my Father's house. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. John 14:2. The Lord will reside in an ivory palace in Jerusalem. He's chosen Zion. He's desired it for his living quarters. This is my rest forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it. It's written in Psalms 132, verses 13 or 14. All the garments smell of myrrh and aloes and cassia out of the ivory palaces whereby they have made you glad, exceedingly happy. The king's daughter is all glorious within. Her clothing is of wrought gold, and she'll be brought unto the king in a raiment of needlework. The virgins, her companions that follow her, shall be brought into thee with gladness and rejoicing be brought, and they shall enter into the king's palace. Psalms 45, 8, 13, and 14 verses. A lot of glorious time when Jesus Christ arrives and lives in his ivory palace at Jerusalem. The Illuminati have a plan that goes exactly parallel with it. I continue with it on the other side of this break. This is AVFS on the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 6. I'm going to call Space. This is View from Space. It's Talk Radio AM 640. I only communicate one way. It's through email, space640toronto.com, or spaceman at 640toronto.com. GA checks in from somewhere in Texas, the state of Texas in the United States, listening tonight, just wanted to say he's present. I thank you for that. They start coming in before the show even begins with all kinds of show suggestions and questions about past shows. And I thank you for each and every one. I just really, really care about the contact that I have with you. No one else. Just you as my listener. So the program of the King James Version of the Bible, ingrained in billions of people's minds, is going to be duplicated with the Illuminati's parallel version of the Masonic Christ, who is going to be made manifest on this earth. And he will be a willful king that will accept this possession from Lucifer. A willful king. He wants to give up his entire mind to the satanic will, and will do the bidding. And his personality will recede so far back into the recesses of his spirit, the satanic one will come to the forefront when all is said and done. But a willful king is named as the one. Someone who desperately wants to be the vehicle, the one chosen, the highest ranking bloodline member, I believe, of the Cainite family, will be the one that will be possessed by the satanic spirit and reign here on this earthly kingdom, the final empire this world will ever see. Mount Hermon means sacred, which is where his house will be when he arrives. Those who viewed it as sacred were intermingling with evil angels, Mount Hermon. Legends that came before Gnosticism even attributed a sacred character to Mount Hermon. It was the supposed residence of the children of Seth at the beginning of human existence. Why do you think that that's where this willful king will choose? Well, has no choice really. Family history states that's where it will be. The supposed residence of the children of Seth at the very beginning of human existence. Seth, of course, was the replacement for Abel, who died, killed by Cain, the first murder. Seth was the third child of Adam and Eve, man and woman, not half God and half man, which was the satanic bloodline of Cain. Seth represents man, and that's where they first lived, man, and that's where the Antichrist is going to park his belongings and move in and inhabit that place. Take it from the family of man, the half-God, half-man bloodline of Cain. The name Hermon is taken from the root herm, meaning sacred, and like most high mountains, it was thought to be the residence of a god whose name Baal Hermon was. Also served as the name of the mountain itself. That you'll find in the King James Version of the Bible, Chronicles 5:23. The supposed palace of God was located in the north, which may refer to the snow-peaked Mount Hermon. I believe it does. And it's always in the north. In the Masonic lodges, the master of the lodge sits in the north. North represents godliness. South represents evil. When you say, wow, my business is really getting hit hard, it's heading south. That's what's meant. North is the home of God. And so that residence will be to the north, located in the north, the snow-peaked mountain of Hermon. In the time of the patriarchs, we have simple sacrifices at sacred sites, indicated by sacred trees or by sacred wells. But after the settlements of Canaan, there were shrines on hilltops, high places, not built so that the worshiper might get nearer to heaven, but because certainly in Palestine there were models of the holy mountain away in the north where the true palace of God, the gods, was situated. In one passage in Psalms, Hermon seems to be used as a synonym for north, just as the sea, the North Sea, is used for a synonym for the west. The view from the perpetually snow-clad Mount Hermon is magnificent. In Egypt, the Pharaoh not only lived in a white house also, but Pharaoh means white house. The word Pharaoh itself is not an Egyptian title at all, but comes from the biblical transcription of the ancient Egyptian title Perio. Translate Perio. And you get the meaning large house or white house. White most likely used as the walls around Perio's palace in the early old kingdoms, which was white. House, as the last ruling of God of ancient Egypt, the falcon god Horus had to incarnate in a human being to share his power and wisdom with the Nile kingdom. In other words, Horus ruled Egypt via Perio, His Highness the White House. Just think it all over again. What is the original White House? The White House in Russia? The White House in the U.S.? Or the ruling White House in Egypt? To build the large pyramids in the desert outside of today's Cairo. Jeroboam built a temple at Dan in the northern kingdom for the 10 tribes which defected from Solomon's son, King Rehoboam. And Jeroboam said in his heart, "Now shall the kings return to the house of David. If his people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of his people turn again to their God. Even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam, king to Judah." Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said to them, "It's too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. So behold your gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." And he set one in Bethel, and he put the other in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one even unto Dan. And he made a house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi, which were the ones chosen by the King James Version of the Bible and the Jewish Torah, that the Levites were to be the priests' tribe of the Jews. Bethel was in the south of Jeroboam's kingdom, close to Jerusalem. Dan, which I believe the Antichrist is in fact from and connected with the line of Cain, was in the north, in his kingdom. I'll continue the other side of the break. Save the FS, it's Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the guy they call a spaceman. I communicate by email alone. Space640toronto.com is one address. The other address is spaceman at 640toronto.com. They come from all around the world. GR writes, enjoying your show here in Ohio via the Tunnel N app. Thanks for being on the air tonight. Also, BT writes in, wouldn't you know it? Earthquakes. Earthquake has dominated the Illuminati-controlled mass media. And of course, I'm talking about a mountain. My emailer writes, the earthquake brings the birthquake of the next Jacobite royal bloodline. Remember, Nepal's earthquake, Everest, the largest mountain in the world, shakes its tail and causes huge devastation. And as the new prince is born, is this what is in store for us all? The one and future king is about to begin. All the best, BT. And this one, checking in from Kabul in Afghanistan, is DM, listening to the show, got up early, found this interesting tidbit of information pertaining to the Islamic view of the end time, because there's not only the Christian view of the end time, there is also the Muslim view of the end time, which is very, very similar, very parallel. Now, one of the Islamic hadiths traditions records that their prophet Muhammad said, armies carrying black flags will come from the Khorasan, Iran and Afghanistan. No power will be able to stop them, and they will finally reach Elah, the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, where they will erect their flags. In Islamic tradition, my emailer writes, from Kabul in Afghanistan, black banners symbolizing violent conquest, and Muslims await the Mahdi's conquest of Jerusalem when he establishes his reign from the temple site. And says a couple of more things about the show, but suffice to say that's basically the parallel in the Islamic world of this which is I'm describing tonight for you. From the Christian perspective, the King James Version of the Bible, because it's the King James Version of the Bible. King James, of course, from the Jacobite line, the bloodline, putting out the Bible, rewriting it. Now, as I say, this bloodline will claim to be from Cain, claim to be from the house of David and not Cain, because the Antichrist will disguise himself as the new coming Christ of the Christian religion. And of course, and so also taking in, bringing in, throwing the blanket over Israel, also being the God of Israel also. So Dan in the north competed with Jerusalem in the days of Passover and tabernacles in ancient times. Now, this temple of Dan was a much larger building than the temple in Bethel for the Passover and tabernacles. And it became, this place, this temple of Dan, became a great place for pilgrimage, attracting people from all around the southern kingdom. And the temple of Dan was called the House of High Places. And he made a house of high places. States the King James Version of the Bible, the Temple of Jerusalem was also called a house in Hebrew. And for centuries, the Temple of Dan in the north successfully contested with the Temple of Jerusalem and attracted throngs of pilgrims. Jeroboam, the man who supervised, under Solomon, the building of Milo, the fortress of Zion, with his strong wall, and who, in recognition of his ability demonstrated in his work, was appointed governor of the northern province, the place where God resides. Now, when king must have desired to erect in Dan a temple surpassing the magnificent Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, only in offering a more imposing building could he ever hope not only to turn the people from going to Jerusalem, but make the people of Judah elect a pilgrimage to Dan over one to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Jeroboam had seen the temples and palaces of Egypt, and his ambition was, of course, to imitate all of the splendor that he had seen in Jerusalem, and to stay on course with the scriptures. In Karnak, for instance, and in Deir el-Bahari, or would this mighty man of valor, industrious constructor of Zion's citadel, and a shrewd politician, try to contest the Temple of Jerusalem by means of an ignoble chapel? That he succeeded in his challenge is a testimony to the size and importance of the temple at Dan. It was not enough that Dan and Bethel were ancient places of reverence, magnificence too, were displayed in the Chapel of Solomon, but the magnificence had to prevail in the temple cities of the northern kingdom. The Temple of Bethel, the smaller of the two Israelites' temples, was demolished 3 centuries later by King Josiah, a few decades before the Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. It was trampled to smithereens by the king, jealous for his God. There's no mention of a destruction of the temple in Dan. Where was Dan and his house of high places? The northern tribes of Israel also worshiped the gods Moloch and Chiun in a tabernacle. You have offered to me sacrifices as an offerings in the wilderness 40 years, O house of Israel. But have you borne the tabernacle of Moloch and Chiun, your images, the star of your God, which you made yourselves? Therefore I will cause you to go into captivity beyond Damascus, said the Lord, of the King James Version of the Bible, of course, whose name is the God of hosts. This is all recorded in Amos chapter 5, verses 25 through 27. King Herod built a temple in Caesarea Philippi. In 20 BC, that was in the area that Dan, the tribe of Dan, controlled, the 13th tribe that has been rejected from the 12 tribes now of Israel. In 20 BC, Herod built a white marble temple where it was built at Caesarea Philippi and dedicated it to one Augustus Caesar. Nimrod's fortress, a 12th century Crusader castle, located on where? Mount Hermon in Caesarea Philippi, the home of the tribe of Dan. More on that when I return after the break on Talk Radio AM 640. Nimrod's fortress. This is Space and ABFS.
40.
I'm the Spaceman. This is a View from Space. That's all it is. Talk Radio AM 640. I communicate by email only. Space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Thank you so much for what you've sent me. I really appreciate it. Could it possibly be? I've been talking about mountains tonight. Mount Hermon so far. Where the great mountain, God, you see, always is at the mountaintop, isn't he? Where man climbs the mountain to the highest peak to ask the question of the God at the top. What is life? You know the old scenario. And now we have Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world, being singled out, showcased even. Could it possibly be that this weekend the Illuminati have triggered a birth pang on the earth? an earthquake or birthquake of the very soon coming new empire. This is floating around the Illuminati-controlled mass media right now, from Associated Press, as a matter of fact, relating to the fact that experts gathered in Nepal a week ago to ready the area for an earthquake. I know. It's happened so often before. For instance, in terrorism. Oh, they knew of these men, but, well, they did it anyway and got away with it. But we knew about them. Here, experts gathered in Nepal a week ago to ready the area for an earthquake. Because Nepal's devastating earthquake this weekend was the disaster the experts say they knew was coming. So just a week ago, about 50 earthquake and social scientists from around the world went to Kathmandu, Nepal, to figure out how to get this poor, congested, overdeveloped, shoddily built area to prepare better for the big one. A possible repeat of the 1934 tremor that leveled this city. They knew, the article says, they knew they were racing the clock, but they didn't know when what they feared would strike. What if it was man-induced? Sound waves is how it's done. I don't have the time tonight, but have done shows on earthquakes and how they may be triggered by sound waves deep within the earth. A birth pang of the earth, a birthquake in Nepal this weekend, showcasing the highest mountain, Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world. I'm talking about Mount Hermon tonight, where Nimrod's fortress was located, named after the mighty biblical hunter himself, Nimrod, perched on a mountain overlooking the spring of Banias in Caesarea Philippi, the area inhabited by the tribe of Dan and given to them, used by the Syrians in an artillery outpost a while ago. It's now a national park today. This spring of Banias, a remarkable monument which has seen all the periods of history of this area of Caesarea Philippi, is the vast castle above the site of the city, built in the Syro, Greek, or even Phoenician times, going back that far, after receiving additions from the Saracens and the Franks. It's still the most remarkable fortress in the Holy Land. Now the Franks, who added to it along with the Saracens, the Franks are, of course, in German, the German word for Germany is Frankreich, because it's the home of the Franks. They're Germanic tribes. The Saracens, well, that's a generic term really for Muslims that's used today. Saracen was used way back when. You see, before the 16th century, the word Muslim and Islam were not even used. They used Saracens. The Saracens was a generic word for Arabs first, then later shifted to Muslims, became synonymous with the Muslim in medieval Latin literature. And this expansion of the meaning had begun centuries earlier in the Holy Roman Empire time, as evidenced in documents from the 8th century. So the Saracens were the Arabs, and the Germans, a Germanic tribe called the Franks. Now the Antichrist will reside at Mount Hermon, Panias, in the territory of Dan. Then shall he return to the ancient territory of Dan Then he shall return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant. The King James Version of the Bible states this same parallel. This is the golden age of Saturn that's coming, returning to his homeland with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant. You see, the Antichrist who is coming is the one that is that octopus that's buying up everything in the world and putting all into debt. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Recorded in Dan 11, verses 28 through 45. And the Antichrist will honor Nimrod, the god of fortresses, in Dan instead of the God of his fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in Jerusalem. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God of whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold, silver, with precious stones, and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, Pan. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. That's recorded in Daniel 11, 38 and 39 verses. Strong's Concordance now will take the word Maoz, which means strength, strong, fortress, hold, fortress, forces, a fort. It even could mean rock, or protection refuge, place of safety, harbor, a stronghold, a refuge of God, a refuge of human protection, which is what this area that the Antichrist will live in is called. That's where it's taken from, Maoz. Now, Jesus Christ will rule the world with a rod of iron. It's stated in the King James Version of the Bible during the millennium. The Antichrist will rule the world with the rod of Adam during the Golden Age. The plan that is written in the King James Version of the Bible at the Old Testament period, each of the princes of the 12 tribes of Israel had a rod of authority, didn't they? The scepter of Judah was exalted above the others because the Messiah would come through that lineage, that family bloodline. Great tribulation. At the end, Jesus Christ will destroy the kings and rulers of the earth with the rod of iron. The millennium, Jesus Christ will rule the world with a rod of iron. Now, the satanic duplicate plan by the Illuminati is for the ancient gods who used rods for hermetic magic, by the way. The Pharaoh's magicians, you see, used rods for sorcery. Kings of nations used scepters as symbols of their authority. It's the power scepter. And in pagan cultures, a rod that had magically blossomed designated the person whom God chose to govern. The Merovingian bloodline is depicted by a budding rod. The Merovingians, I believe, are from the tribe of Dan. The Antichrist will rule the world with the rod of Adam, which supposedly was a branch from the tree of life. Now, the King James Version of the Bible states each of the princes of the 12 tribes of Israel had a rod of authority. The scepter of Judah was exalted above the others because the Messiah would come through that lineage. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak unto the children of Israel, and take of every one of them a rod, according to the house of their fathers. Of all their princes, according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods. See, the 13th is missing. Dan. Write thou every man's name upon his rod, and thou shalt write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi. For one rod shall be the head of the house of their fathers, the priests, the Levi tribe. And thou shalt lay them in the tabernacle of the congregation before the testimony, where I will meet with you, and it shall come to pass that the man's rod, whom I shall choose, shall blossom, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel. Space, back with more. The other side of this break on Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm the guy to call Space. It's a View from Space. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Communication to me only by email at space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Now, as I was saying before the break, Jesus Christ is said, by the King James Version of the Bible, will rule the world with a rod of iron. Now, in pagan cultures, a rod that has magically blossomed designated the person whom God chose to govern. The Merovingian bloodline is depicted by a budding rod. I believe the Merovingian bloodline is in Buckingham Palace today. Merovii, the first member of the Merovingian bloodline, born of a sea monster and a queen. And they are said to be from that bloodline, but will claim to be from the house of David, but are in fact from the house of Dan. So each of the princes of the 12 tribes of Israel each had a rod of authority. As I was saying, in the tabernacle of witnesses, and behold, the King James Version of the Bible says, and this is where the Merovingians get their symbolism from, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi, the priestly tribe of Israel, was budded and grew buds and blossomed into flowers and yielded almonds, what's even more. And Moses brought out all the rods from before the Lord unto the children of Israel, and they looked, and they took every man his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony to be kept for a token against the rebels, and thou shalt quite take their murmurings from me, that they die not. Recorded in Numbers 17, verses 1 through 10. The scepter, the rod, shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, the Savior. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. That's in Genesis 49:10. Now, Jesus Christ, it's said in the King James Version of the Bible, will destroy kings and rulers of the earth with a rod of iron. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Thou shalt break them with the rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. In Psalms chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, and again in 9. Jesus Christ, you see, is stated in the Bible as ruling the world with the rod of iron. With the duplication of the satanic power coming, in the Druidic theocracy, the credentials of the false Christ, the false Messiah, will be validated by a phony Aaron's rod that buds, which will be proclaimed a relic from the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. Oh, there's so much more the Illuminati-controlled mass media has yet to cover, because it's not here yet, it's not time yet. But it will come. Discovery of this ancient relic and miraculous budding will be staged to reveal the Christ and his messianic bloodline, the Masonic Christ, and his, well, phony bloodline connected to the house of David, to the world, and to confer on him absolute authority to rule the world. This rod will also be a magic wand, a divining rod that will perform miracles which will deceive many. That's so interesting. I could spend an entire show on this divining rod which will perform miracles that will deceive millions. Celtic and Kabbalistic lore will be used. Black magic and scripture twisted to justify identification and empowerment of the messianic leader in this way. This rod may also be used as a phallic symbol, I believe, in the Holy of Holies. Now, the ancient gods used rods for hermetic magic. Thyrsus, Greek antiquity, a staff tipped with a pine cone and sometimes twined with ivy and vine branches, carried by Dionysus and his votaries, all of his followers. It's recorded in history. See, why a pine cone with a staff tipped with a pine cone? Well, a pine cone in the occult represents everlasting life, reincarnation. Satan is going to reincarnate into a man, go back into carnation, into a carnate person, a body. A magic wand was the attribute of Apollo's son also, Asclepius, the god of healing. And according to Carnoy, his name means he who holds a magic wand. The caduceus, the symbol of healing, used by the American Medical Association, is no more than a magic wand, round which a pair of serpents are entwined, an echo of the very ancient tree and earth cults in the Aegean area that are connected with serpent worship. Among the virtues possessed by Hermes, wonderful wand of Hermes, was the power to put humans to sleep and to waken them also. The wand is so closely linked to the god Hermes that this herald's wand became the badge of the heroes and ambassadors who claimed the god of protection. Pharaoh's magicians used rods for sorcery also. Then Pharaoh also called the wise man and the sorcerers now the magicians of Egypt. They also did it in like manner with their enchantments. They cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. That's stated in the King James Version of the Bible in Exodus 7:11 and 12, chapter 7, verses 11 and 12. In pagan cultures, a rod, the occult believed that a rod that had magically blossomed designated the person whom God chose to govern. This is why the coming Antichrist will have this power, this scepter, this rod that buds. The Merovingians, as I say, already have it as the symbol of their family bloodline. From support, defense, and guide, the staff becomes the scepter, the symbol of kingship power and authority, as much in the spiritual and intellectual sphere as the social hierarchy. In the army, the field marshal's baton, for instance, the Lord Chamberlain's staff, and the rod of the gentleman ushers stem from the scepter, as their authority stems from the crown. How do you think the Canadian Parliament opens up their sessions? With the rod, banging on the door 3 times. Like the staff, the wand is the symbol of authority and of second sight. Such powers might come from God. They might be magical or stolen from the heavenly powers, or they might be devil-given. The magic wands of wizards, sorcerers, and fairies. Wands, especially those of hazel, used to be employed to douse not only for wells, but, hazelwood wands. Also for mineral dowsing or metal deposits. The wand was the Celtic instrument of magic, above all others, and the symbol of the Druids' power over the elements. The heralds of the early Capetian line of French kings carried a holy wand, which not only served as a badge of office, but above all stood for their monarch's power. In the Old Testament account, number 17, of the budding of Aaron's rod, the rod itself symbolized the group and an individual with whom it was identified. When the rod budded, the family itself was regarded as prospering. Then, once it had been distinguished by its budding, it symbolized God's choice and the authority invested in that family which God himself had chosen. This authority made the chosen person, or an intermediary between God and the children of man. The god or wand symbolizes the meditation and the connection of the person to whom it belongs and the one who gives them the authority. God. Can't wait to get to the 4 magical elements in Druidism: the sword, the rod, the cup, and the shield. That's next on Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS on AM 640. I'm the Spaceman. I communicate by email only. Have 2 locations: space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. I have no Twitter account. I have no website. I have no Facebook. I don't have a cell phone. I keep a very small cyber footprint. Now, in Druidism, there are 4 magical elements. They are the sword, the rod, the cup, and the shield. And in some church artwork and apocryphal writings, the budding staff, the rod, the budding rod, of the royal bloodline is depicted in the hand of Jesus' father, Joseph. Now, following Pope Gregory IX's First Catholic Inquisition of 1231, Grail lore was condemned by the Roman Catholic Church. The Holy Grail, I believe, is not a cup that collected Jesus Christ's blood at the cross when he was dying on the cross. I believe the Holy Grail is actually a person. I believe the Holy Grail is a cup, yes, but containing the bloodline of the satanic cult of Cain through the Merovingian bloodline. Grail lore was condemned by the Roman Catholic Church way back in 12th century. As a result, the traditions moved towards underground symbolism, particularly that of the tarot cards. The four suits of the tarot's minor arcana were the sword, cup, pentacle, baton, or wand. Those correspond with the sword, cup, dish, and lance of the Grail mystique. Eventually, they became redefined as the spades, the hearts, the diamonds, and the clubs that are used today in your 52-card deck of cards. The spade was originally a blade, the male symbol. The heart was the chalice of the alternative church, the female symbol, 5. And the diamond was a valuable pentacle disc, and the club denoted the continuing Davidic lineage, depicted as the sprouting rod of Jesse. That's where your 52 cards in your deck of cards suits came from. False teachers claimed that a restored Aaron's rod from the tree of life would bear witness to the true Messiah. According to the Haggadah, the narrative of the Talmud, the rod with blossoms and fruit was created at the twilight between the 6th and the 7th, the Sabbath day of creation. At the time of Adam's expulsion from the garden, God gave the rod to Adam. States, God gave the rod to Adam, a branch from the tree of life which was engraved with the effable name of God. According to the rabbinical commentary and stories passed from generation to generation to generation to generation, the rod transferred from Adam successively down the line to Enoch, then Shem. By the way, there are 2 Enochs in the Bible. Shem, then Abraham, then Isaac, then Jacob, then Joseph, then Moses, and then David. Let us not be too quick to discard information based on legend, stories passed down through the generations. Perhaps at some future time, a discovery is going to be made to verify the history of this divine rod. Because remember, the Antichrist is going to carry it, and it will be budding, as the symbolism of the Merovingian bloodline has in its symbolism, a budding rod. It seems that the rod was handed down by Adam to Enoch and then to Methuselah. From Methuselah, it would have been transferred to Shem, the son of Noah. Shem was also the head of an academy teaching God's knowledge and was Abraham's tutor. And God supposedly directs Moses to fashion a copper, symbolizing judgment, serpent, and set it upon a pole. It seems logical to assume that the rod was again used for this purpose. Now, some believe that David planted the rod, and some believe that the serpent had never been removed from the rod, therefore must have remained attached to the almond tree as it grew. Later, the serpent was removed and destroyed, but the almond tree was left intact. When the Christ returns, he will set up his throne in Jerusalem, right? Ezekiel 43:7. At this time, it is thought that the prophet Elijah will return the rod, a branch from the tree of life, to the Messiah. The book of Revelation indicates that the Messiah will rule with the rod of iron during the millennial kingdom, right? We've covered that. The word iron comes from the Greek word scytheros, and it's translated as a metaphorical sense to signify absolute authority. Psalms 2, verse 9, recorded there. The author believes this scepter of authority will be none other than a branch from the tree of life. The Messiah will seat himself on the mercy seat in the Holy of Holies on Mount Moriah. He will replace the ark that had symbolized him in the place where God had first fellowshiped with Adam and Eve. In the same place, the divine presence dwelt among his people. Just as a branch from the tree of life was kept before the ark, he will set the almond rod before himself on the throne of God, where the tree of life had grown in the Garden of Eden. Now, I want to return quickly to what I just quickly brushed over, which requires a little more in-depthness for you, a little more background. God directs Moses to fashion a copper, symbolizing judgment, supposedly serpent, and set it on a pole. Why would the God of the Bible fashion a serpent and put it on a pole? The serpent is Satan, the devil. Copper is synonymous with Saturn. And copper is synonymous also with one of the very first ingredients for all life. In the King James Version of the Bible, God directs Moses to fashion a copper serpent and set it upon a pole. Saturn is directly connected with copper, as is Satan. The book of Revelation indicates that the Messiah is to rule with this rod of iron during the millennial kingdom. And of course, there is a duplicate satanic plan to parallel that, coming up after the break on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm a spaceman. This is AV. I'm a spaceman. This is a View from Space. It's Talk Radio AM 640. The only show on the planet, by the way, that no one really knows what time it starts. 8 o'clock now is the start time for the next few months here on AM 640. Just a heads up there. CQ writes, and I communicate by email, space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Says, my question, are there many antichrists or false prophets purporting to be the spiritual healers with books and websites and all online guided meditations? My guess is yes, he says, but how do you discern the genuinely sincere and the false gurus? Signed, CQ. There are no spiritual healers. They're all charlatans. Yes, they are. There are many false prophets, but they are only the forerunners to the one that is to come. Many false antichrists. The antichrist spirit now is in governments. It doesn't do the will of the people. It's following a different set of rules and orders. Can't you tell? It's the Antichrist spirit already that is here. Now, as I said before the break, it is thought that the prophet Elijah, when Christ returns, he sets up his throne at Jerusalem, and that the prophet Elijah will return the rod, the branch from the tree of life to the Messiah. The book of Revelation 19:15 indicates that Jesus Christ will rule with the rod of iron during the millennial kingdom. The word iron I was telling you about before the break comes from Sitharos, translated to mean absolute authority. Now, let no man deceive you by any means. For that day shall not come, except there be a falling away first, and that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. So says the King James Version of the Bible, correct? Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth on the throne of the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. The earthly wounds of Jesus Christ are said to be going to be visible during his millennial reign on earth, and the earthly wounds of the Antichrist, remember, has a deadly blow dealt him and is miraculously brought back to life. Stated in the King James Version of the Bible, the earthly wounds of the Antichrist will be visible also during his reign over the world in this coming golden age, what the Illuminati are calling. The King James Version of the Bible states, in the pre-flood era, Adam was a type of Christ. Eve was taken from the side of Adam as the church is taken from Christ. During the church age, Jesus Christ was pierced with a spear after he dies and resurrected, and Christ still has visible wounds. The Great Tribulation, when Christ returns, after that, mankind will see his crucifixion wounds. With the duplicate plan of the Illuminati to launch their Masonic savior as this Christ, in the pre-flood era, Cain's name meant spear. The mythical weapon of Horus was a spear. Osiris had a groin wound. The Merovingian king, Dagobert, was wounded with a sword during the Christmas season. The occult claims to have the spear used to pierce the side of Christ. The Antichrist will exhibit wounds also, similar to those of Jesus Christ, as stated in the King James Version of the Bible, which will be healed as part of the Grail Mass. Oh, it's going to be some kind of a miraculous time, and I believe it's around the corner. Adam, you see, was a type of Christ. Eve was taken from the side of Adam, as I said, of the church, taken from the Christ. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. And as he slept, the world's first operation, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs while he slept and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib, which the Lord had taken from the man Adam, made he a woman. So states the King James Version of the Bible, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man leaves his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Genesis 2, verses 21 and 22. We're members of his body, it states, of his flesh, of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. This is the great mystery. But I speak concerning Christ and the church, written in Ephesians, recorded in the King James Version of the Bible, chapter 5, verses 30 through 32. You see, Jesus Christ was pierced with a spear, according to the Bible. After he died, the resurrection Christ had visible wounds. But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and out comes blood and water, written in John, recorded in chapter 19, verse 34. Then he said to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. Remember that passage? The doubting Thomas stuck his hand inside the body of Jesus Christ after he had resurrected and was showing himself to his disciples. The doubting Thomas put his hand into his side. And then he believed. Now, when Christ returns, mankind will see his crucifixion wounds. In the midst of the throne and of the four beasts and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as it had been slain. Revelation 5:6. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. All kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Revelation 1:7. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications, and they shall not look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. Zechariah 12:10. The satanic plan that goes parallel to what I just talked to you about in the great tribulation time. A deadly wound that was healed, Revelation 13:3, refers to the historical demise of the Merovingian dynasty, which will be restored during the last half of the tribulation in the person of the restored Saturn King. More next on Cain and what that name actually means on ABFS. I'm the Spaceman. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm the Spaceman. It's View from Space, Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails, the only way you and I stay in touch. Space at 640toronto.com, one address, the other, spaceman at 640toronto.com. M writes, she went on a couple of weeks vacation. And when she come home after her vacation to turn me on, she turned me on at 11 o'clock and only caught an hour of the show. And of course, it had started at 8 o'clock a few weeks ago. She ends her email by saying, telling you that I'm always interested in your topics, and I hope you'll always stay at this new time, this earlier time at 8 o'clock. But that's not going to happen, Em. Just so you know, the time will shift back to 11 o'clock. Now, as I said before the break, Cain's name means spear. It also means smith, by the way, as in blacksmithy, because you see, it was one of the Cain family members who was the very first blacksmith. And that was Tubal Cain. Found out how, living in a mountain, how to melt rock, extract the metal, put it into a mold while liquid, have it cool, and have a metal weapon that dominated. It was like the atom bomb is today, back then with a metal weapon. And the Cainites ruled ruthlessly. Were the first to build cities and move people into cities off of farms. And now they've got this little plan. It's called pack 'em and stack 'em, getting them off of the land where you don't need money, really, or banks to stay alive. You can trade, barter with your neighbors and get sustenance that way. So off the land we all come into the cities, and they pack 'em and stack 'em and tax 'em and beat 'em into submission in the cities. Cain, the first city builder. Now, the mythological god Osiris suffered a groin wound so that he could not reproduce. After his first attempt, Set managed to kill Osiris. Again, cut up his body into numerous parts, and these parts Set spread all over Egypt. Isis, Nephthys, and Anubis searched Egypt and managed to retrieve all of the pieces of the body except one, of course, Osiris's phallus, his penis. Set had dropped the penis into the Nile, it said, making it fertile, where it was eaten by a fish. The god and goddesses pierced Osiris together and created the first mummy. Using her magic, Isis, the mother of Horus, wife of Osiris, fashioned a replacement for Osiris's missing part, either out of clay, wood, or gold, we're not sure, and attached it to her dead husband's body. It is the obelisk today. That is the enlarged object that was to be her dead husband's penis. Done through magic spells. Life was breathed back into Osiris's body. Though some dispute this and believe that Osiris was dead at the time, the goddess managed to share a time of passion with her husband, so impregnating her with their child Horus. Osiris then passes into the afterlife, becoming the god of the dead. The mythical weapon of Horus was, of course, a spear. The spear of Horus was a mythical weapon blessed by the goddess Neith. Small models of this spear were often placed with the dead in the tomb as a protection on the road to the next world. The wounded Merovingian Grail King of the Merovingian bloodline, like most Merovingian rulers, Dagobert had at least 2 capital cities. The most important of these, of course, Stenay, on the fringe of the Ardennes forest in France. Near the royal palace at Stenay stretched a heavily wooded area called the Forest of Wolves. It was in this forest, December 23rd, 679, that Dagobert is said to have gone hunting. Toward midday, he sat down to rest. While he slept, one of his servants pierced him with a lance through the eye. But in the mid-19th century, a most curious document came to light implying that Dagobert was martyred to or for something. Significantly, he founds the Abbey of Orval. A couple of days before Christmas, in 679, Dagobert, hunting near Stenay, as I said, in the Ardennes, when he was confronted by one of Pepin's men and lanced to death, impaled to a tree. The Church of Rome was quick to approve the assassination and immediately passed the Merovingian administration in Austrasia to Pepin the Fat. Bloodlines fighting over power here. Arthur, mortally wounded, King Arthur, conveyed by sea to Glastonbury, where he dies and was buried. Tradition preserves the memory of the place of his interment with the abbey, or as we're told by Geraldus Cambrensis, who was present when the grave was opened by command of Henry II in 1150, and saw the bones and sword of the monarch, and a lead cross led him to his tombstone with the inscription in rude Roman letters, "Here lies buried the famous King Arthur in the island Avalonia." This story has been elegantly verified by Wharton and a little, engineered also. this story's changed a little. Meaningful Stuart symbols, the Stuart crest, by the way, the courage gains strength from a wound. The Rosicrucian connection? Like Osiris, the Fisher King was wounded in his reproductive organ. Amfortas, the Fisher King and Lord of the Grail Castle, is wounded in the genitals and unable to procreate, as was Osiris, and alternatively to die. As in Creton's Grail romance, Amfortas for Wolfram as Parzival's uncle, and when at the end of the poem the curse is lifted and Amfortas can at last die, Parzival becomes heir to the Grail Castle. Now, the Great Tribulation with the golden age of Saturn about to unfold. King James Version of the Bible states, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. And he spoke as a dragon, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live." That's in Revelation 13, verses 1, 3, 11, and 14. The wounded Grail King is the Fisher King. Only by asking, "Who does the Grail serve?" can Percival heal the groin wound of the Fisher King and return the barren wasteland to fertility. You see the ritual being displayed here in many stories, and all of the archetypal heads of these houses. It's the same story, isn't it? Including Jesus Christ. The mysterious blood-tipped white lance that generally accompanies the Grail was said to be the weapon that pierced the hips of the Fisher King. It was identified with the biblical spear of Longinus, which drew blood from Jesus Christ as he was dying on the cross. The wounded Grail King becomes the Saturn King, according to esoteric lore. The Illuminati believe when a man knowingly makes the lance part of himself and then consciously incorporates the strength of Saturn into himself as well, he becomes the Grail King. The Fisher King will be healed by partaking of the Grail Mass wafer, the white powdered gold I speak about. Ingesting gold instead of food, which I believe Steve Jobs was doing to get close to death experiences, to bring back from the other side, the spirit world, the information needed for some of the technology in Apple. It is Le Comte de Graal, Roman de Perceval, Chrétien d'Artois states, "Do not think that he, the Fisher King, takes from it a pike or a lamprey or a salmon. The holy man sustains and refreshes his life with a single mass wafer," the gold wafer I spoke about. "So sacred a thing is the Graal, that he himself is so spiritual that he needs no more of his sustenance than the mass wafer which comes with the Graal." In other words, the coming Antichrist will ingest white powder gold only as the ancient pharaohs used to, and not require food at all. Space, back with more. Flip side of this break on Talk Radio, AM 640. It's 8 p.m. I'm a spaceman. This is A View from Space. Remember, 2 addresses to communicate with me. Spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. The wounded Grail King becomes the Saturn King, according to esoteric lore. When a man knowingly makes the lance part of himself and then consciously incorporates the strength of Saturn into himself as well, he becomes the Grail King. You see, the Fisher King is going to be healed by partaking of the Grail mass wafer of the white powdered gold. And I told you about the ancient pharaohs on past shows where they would contact spirits from the other world in a near-death experience, of which the chemists that worked for the pharaoh would give him a wafer of powdered gold that would take him very, very close to death, hallucinogenic. Yet not too far so that he actually died. And what the guarantee was for the pharaoh, knowing that these chemists would never overdose this pharaoh, was that in the ancient times of the pharaohs, when the pharaoh died, everyone that worked for him in the palace or that was connected with his inner circle, whether they died or not, when he died, they went into the pyramid also and died. So you would want to keep your pharaoh as alive as long as possible, because that was only how long you were to live. So you can be rest assured that the chemists, the earliest of the chemists, the pharmaceutical companies today, are the full-blown version of this. But you can be assured they did their research to find out just how much it would take to have the near-death experience, yet to come back into life after it was over. And when the Antichrist comes, he will see himself as so spiritual that he needs no other sustenance, no food whatsoever, just this white gold wafer to communicate with the demons. The legendary King Arthur, Arcturus, the great bear, that's in your heavens above. Yes, Arcturus, the northern star, will be healed of this deadly wound, the legendary King Arthur would be, and reincarnated in the coming Grail King. That's what the Illuminati believe, a popular traditional belief that's been long entertained among the Brits, that Arthur didn't die, but he'd been carried off to be healed of his wounds in a fairyland, and that he would reappear again to avenge his countrymen and reinstate them in the sovereignty of Britain. In Warton's Ode, a bard of the ancient times in the days of Shakespeare relates to King Henry the traditional story of Arthur's death, and closes with these lines: "Yet in vain a Paynim foe, armed with fate the mighty blow. For when he fell, the elfin queen, all in secret and unseen, o'er the fainting hero threw her mantle of ambrosial blue, and bade her spirits bear him far in Merlin's agate axled car, to her green isles enamelled steep, far in the navel of the deep. O'er his wounds she sprinkled dew from flowers that in Arabia grew. There he reigns a mighty king. Thence to Britain shall return, if right prophetic rolls I learn, borne on victory's spreading plume, his ancient scepter to resume, his nightly table to restore, and brave the tournaments of yore. In other words, he's coming back. On the grave in Glastonbury, supposedly where King Arthur lived and died, right, is written, our once and future king. And there are two people, the Merovingian bloodline, living in Buckingham Palace today, in London, claiming their bloodline from the Merovingian blood. And two of them have the name Arthur. Prince William and Prince Charles. They could conceivably, one of them could conceivably follow Queen Elizabeth and take the throne as King Arthur. The King James Version of the Bible relates the tribulation period this way. As the Lion of Judah, Jesus Christ will open the book and unseal the tribulation judgments. The satanic plan. The king of Atlantis, Saturn, Kronos, was associated with the lion also. Yes. The tribe of Dan took over Laish, meaning lion, and renamed it Dan. Christ's enemies are prophetically revealed to be the lion in Psalms 22:71. Merovingian kings used the symbol of the lion, and the Roman Pope shall be overthrown with the roaring of a lion during the tribulation. The Great Tribulation, the Antichrist, is identified with the lion, which is related to the tribe of Dan. The Stone of Destiny will roar like a lion. It's stated to identify the false Messiah as the coming Christ. Now, the King James Version of the Bible, describing tribulation as the Lion of Judah, Jesus Christ will open the book and unseal the tribulation judgments. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the seven seals thereof. Revelation 5:5. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as an old lion who shall rouse him up. Then the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Genesis 49, verses 9 and 10. As John weeps because in all creation no one is found worthy to open the book, one of the elders is recorded in verse 5 as telling him that he shall not keep on weeping, for one is worthy to open the book, namely, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David. The allusion to the lion is a reference to Genesis 49, verses 9 and 10, where it's predicted that the future ruler of the earth shall come from the tribe of Judah, the lion tribe. The duplicate plan of the Illuminati to put their Saturn king on the throne as the Masonic Christ. Kronos, the Saturn king, associated with the lion also. A statue found in the Pope's country residence, as a matter of fact, at Castel Gandolfo in Italy, where Pope Benedict XVI Emeritus is now living as his home, where once was a villa belonging to the Emperor Domitian of the Holy Roman Empire. This statue represents Kronos with a lion's head and 4 wings. Right there, the spirit of the Antichrist at the residence at Castel Gandolfo, the Vatican's own property. In a Gnostic writing from the Nag Hammadi library, there is a reference to a male and a female archon with the face of a lion, called Aldalboth. Ophites affirm that Aldalboth is identical with the god of Genesis. Now, the tribe of Dan took over Laish, meaning lion, and renamed it Dan. And the coast of the children of Dan went out too little for them. Therefore, the children of Dan went up to fight against Leshem, and took it, and smote it with the edge of the sword, and possessed it. Said those are the metal swords they had, and dwelt therein, and called Leshem Dan, after the name of Dan, their father. That's recorded in Joshua 19, verse 47. Laish, a lion, that's what it means. It's called also Leshem and Dan, if you research the subject. Space, back with more. The other side of this break on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Communicate by email only. Couple of addresses. Spaceman, 640toronto.com. One. The other, space at 640toronto.com. So, if you've got some information you'd like to pass along to me, or you got a critique of the show, or you have a comment or a question, feel free to use those, either one of those addresses, to communicate with me. And SR, my resident numerologist, writes, the Grail King and Antichrist. What he does, you see, is breaks down certain words, and words have numbers. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and there are some rules to follow in this numerology, but he's always right on the money with his numerology. So he has taken the Grail King and the word Antichrist and broken them down using simple English gematria that I just described. 1 is A, 2 is B, etc. The Grail King works out to exactly 121 equal. The Antichrist breaks down to 121, the exact same. And how do we get to 121? Well, it's 11 times 11. And 11 is the number that is connected with the Antichrist, the number of destruction, as in 9/11. When you see 11, it is the coming Antichrist. In news stories, you may see it written on a tank. It may be a license plate with part of the number obliterated or taken off and not captured on the screen, and those two numbers will be there, the 1 and the 111. Yes, numerology is being used all throughout the black magic spells that have been cast on the Illuminati-controlled mass media with all the pictures that you see. They're chock full of the symbolism. Psalms 22, verse 71. A messianic prophecy reveals that the lion, in conjunction with the unicorn, as the enemies of Jesus Christ. For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me, they pierced my hands and my feet, and I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They are part my garments among them, and cast lots upon my vesture. But be not thou far from me, O Lord, O my strength. Haste thee to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. Psalm 22, 16:21. The lion, you see, is a symbol of the Merovingian dynasty. The fish was an emblem of the Merovingian kings, along with the Lion of Judah. Scotland's royal house of Stuart, which Lady Diana was a member, and who Prince William is a member of. Not so with his father, who is Prince Charles, who is not from the House of Stuart. That is why Lady Di was contracted to marry Prince Charles to bring all of the Roman Catholic kings and queens dynasty of England into their bloodline. And it's all now encapsulated in Prince William and the backup Prince Harry. Because the Jacobite royal rule is there must be an heir and a spare. So Scotland's royal house of Stuart arose from a martial union of the hereditary lines of Jesus and his brother James, springing from the Merovingians' own source on the one hand, and from the Celtic kings of Britain on the other. The Stuarts emerged as a truly unique Grail dynasty, and have long been known as the House of the Unicorns, along with the Davidic Lion of Judah and the Franco-Judaic Fleur-de-Lis. This desposinic unicorn was incorporated in the royal arms of Scotland. The unicorn was considered to correspond to the virile Jesus and was related to the anointing, the messianic imagery of Psalm, the sacred song recorded in Psalm 92, verse 10. The mystic beast was among the foremost symbols of the Albigensian Cathars, who were so hideously persecuted by the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. The lion, you see, in the occult, symbolizes the alchemical transformation of man. You knew there was a connection, right? The lion, the whole man, humanity in its strength, is then resuscitated, but in a very different shape by its passage through this mystic, we could call it death. By its passage through this mystic death, the color of unrighteousness is taken away. Its taming completed. That's why the lion lays down with the lamb in the King James Version of the Bible. It receives wings. Therefore it may fly up to Saul, the Son, the perfect or divine, and is transmuted, say the alchemists, into the red dragon. Cybele is the lion, and the bee, the goddess of Phrygia. Now, the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, the peaceful time, when the pact has been signed and peace is going along swimmingly in the world, the Roman Pope shall be overthrown with the roaring of a lion. Many godly people have secretly and altogether desperately pushed at the Pope's tyranny, which afterwards, with great earnest and special zeal in Germany, was thrown from his seat and trodden underfoot, whose final fall is delayed and kept for our times, when he also shall be scratched in pieces with nails, and an end be made of his ass's cry by a new voice. If by the new voice of a roaring lion, according to priests, this reading is found in the Frankfurt 1617 edition of Confessio Fraternitalis, the Confession of the Laudable Fraternity of the Most Honorable Order of the Rosy Cross, the Rosicrucians, the occultists. As they have appropriated Christ's messianic title, the Lion of Judah, the synagogue of Satan is going to try to steal the Jews' identity and inheritance during the tribulation period. More on that on the other side of this break. I'm a spaceman. This is Talk Radio. This show is called AVFS, A View from Space. I'm the guy that calls space. It's A View from Space on Talk Radio, AM 640. I communicate by email only. I've got a couple of addresses. Spaceman at 640toronto.com. That's one. The other one is space at am640toronto.com. Now, let me just call him CH. He writes, I was listening to your show on my way home from work tonight, and I just wanted to mention about the playing cards that you were talking about, and the suits and a deck. I was mentioning the clubs, the spades, the diamonds, the hearts are part of the 4 elements of Druidic lore. And he writes, the 4 suits are literally, in Italy on a deck of cards today, they are literally swords, suns, cups, and batons. They don't have clubs, spades, diamonds, and hearts. Thanks for the shows and for the information. CH. So before the break, I was talking about the Pope, the Vatican, I believe is going to be the false prophet, used up until the time that the Antichrist no longer needs him and wants to replace the religion with Luciferianism and to worship the king. So the Roman Catholic Pope will be overcome with the roaring of a lion. Many godly people have secretly and altogether desperately pushed as the Pope's tyranny, which afterwards, with great earnest and special zeal in Germany, was thrown from his seat and trodden underfoot, whose final fall is delayed and kept for our times, when he also shall be scratched in pieces with nails, and an end be made of his reign. And the voice will be still. A new voice will come in its place, and that of a roaring lion. That's pretty much how it will be when the Roman Catholic Church will be aiding the Antichrist to arise. Now, as they've appropriated Christ's messianic title, the Lion of Judah, the Illuminati, with their satanic worship, will try to steal the Jews' identity and inheritance during this tribulation period. At the start of this golden age of Saturn, this new empire that's to arise after the American empire is destroyed. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth the mouth of a lion. Revelation 13, verses 1 and 2. Heavily used in tonight's show because it's so chocked full of the hints and the symbolism that is to come. Now, in the millennium, The marks upon Jesus Christ will be reminders of the cross, of his crucifixion, his pierced hands. In the Golden Age, the cross mark upon the Antichrist will symbolize the intersecting rivers which flowed through the Garden of Eden. Yes, nurturing the tree of life. The King James Version of the Bible describes Christ's crucifixion wounds on his hands, visible reminders of his atonement on behalf of God's elect. The Great Tribulation end, when Jesus Christ returns, it said his visible crucifix wounds will cause men to mourn. Now, the satanic duplication of this plan, the cross in the circle, was a symbol of Atlantis, the Garden of Eden, and also the mark of Cain, the X. Or cross, same thing. Turn a cross on its side, it's an X. Now, pagan religions used cross symbols which were connected to their gods too. The red cross was the symbol of the Merovingian king, the Knights Templars, and the esoteric church. Now, false Christs will pierce their hands to deceive people that they are Jesus Christ. You've seen it. In this past Easter parade, they always have someone playing the role of Jesus Christ who actually gets something driven into his hands that deceives people into believing that he is Jesus Christ. In the enactment, the Antichrist and false Zadokite priests will be associated with cross symbols. Now, Christ's crucifixion wounds on his hands, visible reminders of his atonement on behalf of God's elect, and this is recorded in Isaiah 49, verse 16. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to him, "We have seen Jesus." But he said to them, "Except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side where they put the sword, I won't believe." After 8 days, again, his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the door being shut, as the Bible restates, and stood in the midst of them and said, "Peace be unto you." Then he said to Thomas, "Go ahead, put your finger into my hands, and then put your hand into my side, and be not faithless, but believing." And Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen, and yet have believed without seeing." Recorded in John 20, verses 24 and 25. "Behold my hands and my feet, that is, I myself. Handle me and see me, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as you have." And we had those words spoken. He showed them his hands and his feet, recorded in Luke 24, verses 39 through 40. When Jesus Christ returns, his visible crucifix wounds will cause men to mourn, the Bible says, "And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for me as one mourns for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn dying. And it shall come to pass in that day that the prophets shall be ashamed, every one of his vision, when he has prophesied. Neither shall they wear a rough garment to deceive, but he shall say, I am no prophet. And one shall say unto him, What are these wounds in your hands? Then he'll answer, those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Written in Zechariah, a couple of places, chapter 12 and 13. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man descending, coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Recorded in Matthew 24, verse 30. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. Revelation 1:7. 4. The satanic parallel and how that unravels next on AVFS on Talk Radio, AM 640.
M640.
I'm going to get a call space. It's View from Space, Talk Radio, AM 640. Like to communicate with me, email only, spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. And thank you for the one that you sent me. I really appreciate it. As I said, the Bible states that Jesus Christ, when he returns, his wounds from the cross will be visible. The Antichrist will have wounds in his hands resembling Christ's crucifixion wounds. The counterfeit Michael, the prince, will be marked with an X sign. The Merovingian kings, the European Council of Princes, will also have a red cross tattooed on them. The cross, you see, is a circle, the rosy cross, symbol of the Rosicrucians, representing the synthesis of Christianity and the Celtic tradition, the melding of the two. This red cross is associated with the mark that will be given to mankind. Oh yes, the cross within a circle is a highly occult symbol. It's the old ancient Celtic cross. In the great ditch surrounding the whole land of Atlantis, like a circle into which streams flowed down the mountains, you see the original of the 4 rivers of paradise and the emblem of the cross surrounded by a circle. There was a circle of a great ditch of water around Atlantis, the land, and the 4 rivers of paradise made the cross, all with water. Notice, a circle of water, a cross of water, 4 rivers of paradise, the emblem of the cross, surrounded by a circle, which, you'll see, was from the earliest pre-Christian ages, accepted as the emblem of the Garden of Eden. When we ask the question, how it comes that the cross has been revered from the highest, longest date back in time to antiquity by the races of the old and new worlds, you learn that it's a reminiscence of the Garden of Eden. In other words, of Atlantis. The mark of Cain is the oldest grant of arms. The family heralding family emblem is the oldest grant of arms in sovereign history. The mark of Cain, the cross. In the Midrash and the Phoenician traditions, the mark of Cain is defined as being a cross within a circle. It was in principle a graphic representation of kingship, when the Hebrews called the Melchut, the kingdom, from the Akkadians. Now the Akkadians are the ancient tribe of Dan and the tribe of Cain. The dew cup, or cup of waters, identified as a red cross within a circle, became the mark of Cain and the subsequent emblem of the kingly succession. Pagan religions used symbols connected with the cross. That which is now the Christian cross was originally Christian, not a Christian emblem at all, but was the mystic Ptah, or cross, of the Chaldeans and the ancient Egyptians, the true original form of the letter T, the initial of the name Tammuz, in which, in Hebrew, radically the same as ancient Chaldee, as found on coins, is formed in the number 1 of the accompanying woodcut, and the Etrurian and Coptic as the sign there. This mystic cross, or Ptah, was marked in baptism on the foreheads of those initiated into the mystery religion of the ancient Egyptians, and is used in every variety of way as a most sacred symbol. It is, in fact, not less remarkable than well attested that the Druids in their groves were accustomed to select the most stately and beautiful tree as an emblem of the deity they adored, and having cut the side branches, they affixed 2 of the largest of them, the highest part of the trunk, in such a way that those branches extended on each side like the arms of a man, creating a cross, together with a body, presenting the appearance of this huge cross on the bark. In several places, also inscribed the letter Thaw. It was worshipped in Mexico for ages before the Roman Catholic missionaries even set foot there. Large stone crosses being erected, probably to the god of rain. The cross was, you see, widely worshipped and seen as a sacred emblem around the world. It was unequivocal symbol of Bacchus, the Babylonian Messiah, where he was represented with a headband covered with crosses. This symbol of the Babylonian god is referenced in all the wide wastes of Tartary where Buddhism prevails, and in a way in which is presented among them forms of a striking commentary on the language applied by Rome to the cross. Now, the pagan Ptah, or T, or cross, entered Christendom by the way of the Gnostic Christianity, which began in Egypt. Now, this pagan symbol seems first to have crept into the Christian church in Egypt, generally into Africa. A statement of Tertullian about the middle of the 3rd century shows how much, by that time, the Church of Carthage was infected with the old leaven. Egypt, especially, which was never thoroughly evangelized, by the way, appears to have taken the lead in bringing in this pagan symbol. The first form of that, which is called the Christian cross, founded on Christian monuments there, is the unequivocal pagan Ptah, the Egyptian sign of life. Sir G. Wilkinson once said, a supporter of the Merovingian bloodline, of course, being a Sir, knighted, a still more curious fact may be mentioned respecting this hieroglyphical character, the Ptah, the cross, the T, that the early Christians of Egypt adopted in lieu of the cross, which was afterwards substituted for it, prefixing it to inscriptions in the same manner as the cross in later times. For though Dr. Young had some scruples in believing the statement of this Sir Edmondstone, that it holds the position in the sepulchres of the great oasis. And he says, I can attest that such is the case, and that this numerous inscriptions headed by the Ptah are preserved to the present day on early Christian monuments. That's the circle with the cross in it. It's the old Celtic cross. The drift of this statement is pretty much this, that in Egypt, the earliest form of that which has since been called the cross was no other than the crux ansata, or sign of life, borne by Osiris and all the Egyptian gods, that the ansa, or handle, was afterwards dispensed with, and that it became the simple ta, or ordinary cross, as it appears to this day. And that the design of the first employment of this on the sepulchres could have no reference to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, but was simply the result of the attachment to old and long cherished pagan symbols, which is always strong in those who, with the adoption of the Christian name and profession, are still, to a lesser extent, really pagan at heart. And this is the only origin of the worship of the cross. The X sign is an occult symbol. Like how often you deal with the X sign when you're even on your computer. You X everything out, don't you? You kill it, if you want to put it that way, just like Cain. You get rid of it by clicking on the X. From the earliest times, the symbols, the Grav and the V, have been used to identify the sacred unity of the bridal chamber. The male blade and the female chalice, gender opposites, of course, were brought together, one above the other, in the familiar X sign. This was the original holy sign of the cross and was used as the mark of baptism and initiation long before the time of Jesus, as confirmed in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was placed on the foreheads of those who cried for Jerusalem and was granted at the highest degree of community initiation. Yes, the X is really a symbol of the male and female coming together. That's why you have pornographic movies described as XXX. Space back with more. Back after this break on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm a spaceman. It's View from Space. Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Talking about the cross right now. Long before Christianity, it was the Ta in the ancient Egyptian mystery religion. And then, by way of the Roman Empire influence, a new cross was later devised, the upright Latin cross of St. Peter's Church, with its high crosspiece. The esoteric Christians retained their former X, though, perceiving the Latin cross as representative of Roman torture, and so the original X became a sign of heresy in the eyes of Rome. This heretical image has been perpetuated to this day and has been associated with flesh and the devil, as in X-rated movies, as I was saying before the break. Now, even though St. Peter's cross was Latinized, the tradition of his brother Andrew was maintained by the original X, the St. Andrew's cross. Andrew was crucified at Patras, near the Black Sea, where he had worked among the Scythians before they began their westward movement to Caledonia. And as a result, he later became the patron saint of Scotland, and his cross became the famous national saltire. Rome was not happy about the appearance of this ancient esoteric device, because, you see, it was basically the melding together of the ancient Celtic belief system with the Roman Catholic religion. Now, the close correspondence between the ancient Celtic concepts and the esoteric Christian data leads you to believe that for the Irish of the Carolingian era, the cross in a circle represented a close and perfect synthesis of Celtic tradition and Christianity. According to tradition, Merovingian monarchs all supposedly bore a distinctive birthmark which distinguished them from all other men, which rendered them immediately identifiable, and which attested to their semi-divine or sacred bloodline. This birthmark reputedly took the form of a red cross, either over the heart or between the shoulder blades. Now, the occult sign of the Son of Man will be an occult cross, the glorious cross, the cross of the second coming, which will be seen before Christ returns, is the sign of the Son of Man, the sign of the risen Christ. The Antichrist and false Zadokite priest will be associated with the cross also. So, if any man will say to you, lo, there he is, there is the Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall rise false Christs, false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect, recorded in Matthew. During the tribulation period, Jesus Christ is to reveal his power and wisdom, symbolized by horns and eyes in the tribulation judgments. During the Golden Age, the horn of the unicorn will symbolize the androgyny and psychic powers of the Antichrist. The King James Version of the Bible states that horns and eyes were metaphors for the power and omniscience of God. Jesus Christ will reveal his powers and wisdom symbolized by 7 horns and 7 eyes in the tribulation judgment, it states in the King James Version of the Bible. The satanic plan to parallel that, superimpose it over top, fake the second coming, the unicorn descended from the antediluvian god Pan. Now, the unicorn was prophetically revealed as the symbol of those who would crucify Jesus Christ. The unicorn is a symbol of the Merovingian dynasty. A false ark of the covenant containing the earth charter will be carried by poles claimed to be horns of a unicorn during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. Horns, you see, were metaphors for the power and glory of God as seen in the giving of the law on Mount Sinai. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise, and his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand, and there was the hiding of his power. Oh, yes. The Bible dedicates a lot of scripture to that very subject. Horns and eyes symbolize the power and wisdom of Jesus Christ, is what the Bible is trying to get across. The satanic duplication of this is the fact that demons interbred with human women, producing a race of demonic creatures, half man, half gods. All right? Which are the Illuminati bloodlines today? Giants in the earth in those days, and are today the bloodline family members. And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them, the same, because mighty men, of which were old, men of renown, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was evil only continually, and repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him at his heart. Yes, among these symbolism, the mythical creatures of the mystery religions represent demons. The phoenix made its nest of essence in flames and sweet-smelling perfumes. The unicorn had the body of a horse, the feet of an elephant, the tail of a wild boar. The upper half of the centaur's body was human, and the lower half, horse. The pelican of the Hermeticis fed its young from its own breast, and to this bird were assigned other mysterious attributes which could have been true only allegorically. Although seen by a lot of researchers in the Middle Ages as actual living creatures, none of these, the pelican accepted, ever existed outside the symbolism of the mysteries, the mystery religions. Possibly they originated in rumors of the animals then little known. In the temple, though, they became a reality, for they signified the manifold characteristics of man's nature. The unicorn may have been the single-horned rhinoceros. To the student of the secret wisdom, these composite animals and birds simply represent various forces working in the invisible worlds. This is a point which nearly all researchers on the subject of medieval monsters seem to have overlooked. There are also legends to the effect that long before the appearance of human beings, there was an existence of a race or species of composite creatures which were destroyed by the gods. The unicorn, the horse goat worshipped by Merovingians and Freemasonry, descended from the ancient goat god Pan. The unicorn, you see, is the direct descendant of Capricorn and Pan. Among the Greeks, Pan was the ancient god. His wife was Maya. In Mayan vocabulary, Maya, and Pan added to Maya makes the name of the ancient capital Mayapan. This goat-like god originated from the amphibious sea goats in the form of Capricorn, for which there is both an astrological meaning and a literal meaning. As you trace the origins of the sea goat to the goat man Pan, your journey continues to the horse goat in the form of the unicorn, incorporated in the flag of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. People all over the world salute the unicorn on the Scottish and British flags in various forms, and Masonic brotherhoods, who were eliminated by the Roman Church for worship of it, by the way, in the form of the goat of Mendes. And why were they worshipping it? Because in Chaldean mythology, the god Ea had a body of an antelope and a dolphin combined. This god, like Prometheus, introduced the spark of astral light into us when he created us. The Sumerian god Enki, also called Ea, created the origins of the human race in his Abzu, an underwater palace. Among the Phoenicians, the god was called Dagon, and Dagda was the father of the Irish gods. Yes, prophetically revealed in Psalm 22, verse 71, is that an assembly of the wicked, whose symbol was the unicorn, would crucify Jesus Christ. Now, the unicorn is found in the coat of arms of the Merovingian dynasty today. Scotland's royal house of Stuart arose from a marital union of the heretical lines of Jesus Christ and his brother James, springing from the Merovingians' own source on the one hand, and from the Celtic kings of Britain on the other. The Stuarts emerged, therefore, as a truly unique Grail dynasty, and have long been known as the House of the Unicorns, along with the Davidic Lion of Judah and the Franco-Judaic Fleur-de-Lis. The unicorn was incorporated into the royal arms of Scotland and was considered to correspond to the virile Jesus and was related to the anointing Messiah. Space back with more. Flip side of the break on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the guy that calls space. It's a View from Space. Talk Radio AM 640. Final segment in tonight's show. So, the mythical creatures of the mystery religious symbology represent demons. And among the Greeks, Pan was the ancient god, his wife Maya. And this is where the goat comes into the picture. And the sex life of the goat is just, the real goat is absolutely an eye-opener when it comes to having a peek inside how the elite run their lives and their sex lives. I mean, it's almost a carbon copy. It's absolutely incredible, uncanny how it's so parallel. As with what I've been talking to you tonight about, with Jesus Christ's second coming, and the Illuminati launching their Masonic Christ as the Lord and Savior of this planet. And I've been pointing out all of the symbolism. For instance, the unicorn, coat of arms in the Merovingian dynasty, Scotland's royal house of Stuart, a marital union of the hereditary lines of Jesus Christ and his brother James, springing from the Merovingians' own source on the one hand and from the Celtic kings of Britain on the other, making them one, merging them now into two people. Those would be Prince William, who has all of the bloodline of the ancient Celtics and all of the Catholic kings and queens of Great Britain in one person, along with Harry as the backup. Because the unicorn is in the coat of arms of the Merovingian dynasty. And the unicorn, of course, a phallic symbol signifying psychic awakening via ritual sex. The horn growing out of the unicorn's head represents the third eye, the all-seeing eye. Hieronymus once said, "The single eye has also been identified with the third eye or spiritual eye, and therefore with clairvoyance." Psychic powers. The esoteric tradition relates the single eye to the inner light, intuitive power, illumination, and the philosopher's stone of the Rosicrucians. In Celtic mythology and European folklore, a fabulous beast comes in the form of a horse with a single spiraling horn growing from the center of its forehead. In alchemy, it is a symbol of the complete mastery of phallic sexuality by ritual intercourse and its conversion into the forces of pure visualization. I put it to you now today, the phallic sexuality rituals of intercourse performed by the royal families of the crowned heads of Europe this is how all of the leaders that have bloodline membership in this royal bloodline positioned in power today through sex, all from the same seed. I believe Vladimir Putin, Angela Merkel, Prince William, Prince Charles, Prince Philip, the Queen, are all interrelated. Thanks to this ritual sex magic. In alchemy, it's a symbol of the complete mastery of phallic sexuality by ritual intercourse and its conversion into the forces of pure visualization. To open the eye a little bit is to experience psychic powers, you see. To open the eye completely is to have your brain flooded with the pure consciousness of Lucifer himself. This is why one of the Masonic symbols is the all-seeing eye. The CBS network, it has the all-seeing eye as its symbol. It's on the American dollar bill. It's a symbol of illumination. This is Satan's counterfeit for being born again. In it, you acquire a personal relationship with Lucifer. Just as you would in Christianity, you begin to think his thoughts. You begin to see with his eyes. You begin to look at humans the way he does. And it is not a pretty sight. A counterfeit Ark of the Covenant containing the Earth Charter will be carried by poles claimed to be the horns of this mythological unicorn. The Earth Charter, as it will be known, will be housed in the Ark of Hope until its formal presentation to the Earth Summit's anniversary. The Ark is a rectangular box that measures 49 by 32 by 32 inches. The side panels of the Ark visualizes a season, a direction, an element, a universal symbol. Symbols of faith from traditional religions and indigenous societies, like the Hopi, surround the top panel of spirit that honors the children and young animals of the world. The 96-inch carrying poles are unicorn horns which render evil ineffective. In the occult world, this description is provided by the Ark's official website even. Ark of Hope, it's called. In the golden age of Saturn, said in the Bible, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Recorded, Daniel 7, verse 8. The unicorn symbolizes the androgyny of the Antichrist. The unicorn is yet another androgynous symbol. In China, the unicorn is known as Qilin, which means male, female. The unicorn symbolizes the messianic delusion of the Antichrist, and I tell you now, the forerunner of the Antichrist, of which is androgynous, is Bruce Jenner on your television set all this weekend. And the talk of the water cooler set, crowd, and social media now through Monday. The unicorn, you see, symbolizes the messianic disillusionment and the Antichrist. In both European and Oriental traditions, the unicorn is identified with a Messiah who comes when the world is in danger and who heralds the coming of a new and better age. I have to close with that. This has been A View from Space on Talk Radio, AM 640. Coast to Coast is next. I'm Space, and I'm